Welcome to IVF This, episode 112, Being Your Own Champion. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you are all doing so well today. We're going to talk about being your own champion today, something that I think is undervalued and often overlooked. And apparently, this concept is quite the contortionist based on my description. So I'm going to start by telling you the day that I had. Okay, trigger warning. I'm going to be talking a little bit about my kids, not the whole episode, but to give it context as to why I think being your own champion is so important. So if that's going to be tough for you, no harm, no foul, no shade, no shame. We got 111 other episodes that you can check out until you're ready to hear this one, okay? So my 2 oldest kiddos have been out of school for the Easter holiday. On Friday, we took them to the movies and ran a few errands, and we just had some fun. But I had planned for them to go to this day camp thing on Monday so that I could get some writing done and just kind of odds and ends. And they were going to go to this trampoline park. So it was like this beautifully planned moment that I had. Well, I kind of woke up this morning in a rush. Do you ever have those days like you woke up pretty much on time, but you just feel like you're in a rush? You feel this sense of urgency. That was me. Full stop. Everything was this like nervous, frenetic energy. And I was snapping at everyone and I was super frustrated, like the slightest perceived inconvenience. Right? I just had this running list of things that I just had to accomplish, and everything was due right now. Like there was no triage system. Everything had the same urgency and due date. And right, for me, everything seemed to have taken longer than I expected it to, which was also annoying. But when I finally get to dropping them off at this camp, we walk in and it was like a ghost town. And my stomach just dropped. So I found someone that worked there and they were very kind. They were very, very kind, but they let me know that the only day camp they had for the Easter holiday was that Friday before, the one where we were at the movies. And I had signed up for that class, but had been absolutely certain that it was supposed to be for Monday, today. So my kiddos were super disappointed, obviously, and I was completely embarrassed. And by the time we made it out of the building, I was already in tears. And my sons were very gentle with me and they could tell how upset I was. Now, they were still disappointed, rightfully so. But I was really upset. I was upset with myself and still running on all of that adrenaline and cortisol that I kind of started my day with. And oh, let me tell you all of the thoughts that I had running through my head. How could you do this? What's wrong with you? I can't believe you didn't notice the dates were wrong. Blah, 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 blah. Just a bunch of crap like that. And I'm sure many of you can relate. I could feel like that hot flush on my cheeks and my heart was pounding. And I knew the emotion that I was experiencing was embarrassment. It was really important to remember and to know that no one was trying to make me feel bad or embarrassed about any of this, right? The woman at the trampoline park had been so kind and gentle and said, "You're doing the best you can." And both of my sons were disappointed, but still telling me, "We're okay, Mama. Like, we can have fun at home." They're very kind. I texted my husband to tell him, and I totally preempted with, "I need you to not react to this." And I need you to know that I'm really upset with myself. So I need some kindness. And just to let him know that I am taking this much harder than you could possibly imagine. So please, again, be gentle with me, which he was, which was no surprise. But I still cried all the way home. And so I'm dropping the boys off at home, and I then started to go to my kickboxing class, which had been the plan beforehand. And my husband works from home, so he was able to hang out with them while I worked out and did the rest of the things on that running to-do list that just had to be done. And again, I cried all the way to my kickboxing class, reciting all of the unhelpful, mean, shame-provoking thoughts. Then when I got to the gym, I sat in my car. The tears were easing, right? But the conversation in my head was on full blast. Do you ever have the feeling like you just want to crawl out of your skin? That was me, sitting in my gym's parking lot. And this is where self-coaching is so powerful. I knew the feeling that I was experiencing this morning, that urgency, that rush. They were going to stay with me. They'd been with me since I woke up. Here we are. The embarrassment and disappointment had eased that urgency a bit, right? It was kind of like a hip check for me, but it was still there. And I knew I was experiencing embarrassment, and then that was okay. I wanted to be embarrassed by my actions. Not that I was super glad that they happened the way they did, but I didn't want to feel happy about how things transpired. And that's a really important thing to remember when we talk about the more uncomfortable emotions. I wasn't trying to be sunshine and daisies and everything is awesome. I was most assuredly not awesome that I had made this mistake. But it also wasn't the Greek tragedy that I was making it mean in my brain. Now, ordinarily, I would have just pulled out my journal and I would have jotted things down, doing paper thinking. That's what I like to call journaling. But I didn't bring my journal with me. For whatever reason, I didn't bring it with me. So I did the next best thing I could in that moment, and I paused. I slowed my breathing, and I just opened myself up to the urgency, to the embarrassment, to all of the feelings that I was experiencing. Now, you might be asking yourself, Emily, who wants to open up to a tight chest or flushed cheeks or a pit in the middle of your stomach? Who wants to open up to stress? But when I did that, and this is why I teach it, it helped me to let the emotions flow through me. It helped me process all of these emotions and then kind of reconsider things from a different perspective. It helped me get control and re-regulate my nervous system in a place where I could access my wisdom, my intuition, all of those things. Not the part of my brain that was lobbing all sorts of accusations and disgust, the part of my brain that is much more gentle and responsive. I placed my hand on my chest, which is something that I've talked about on this podcast before. It's a somatic therapeutic technique, and it's a super fast way to help ground yourself while you're doing deep breathing. So I had my hand on my chest and I was doing these deep breathings, and I just started to remind myself, right now you are feeling a lot of big feelings. And you're also kind of being a bully to yourself. Now, the big feelings are expected, but the bullying is optional. I got to choose. I don't have to make this part harder on myself by being an a-hole to myself. I don't have to beat myself up over this. I can be embarrassed or stressed or whatever that is, but not make it mean anything about my worth or me as a person or as a mom. And that's when I sat down. Well, I finished my workout, but that's when I sat down and I wrote this podcast episode, and all about what I'm about to tell you just kind of poured out of me. And it's really all related, right? It's why we aren't being our own champions. And I know this firsthand because I've done it so many times to myself. And now I teach you how to do it yourself. And that's what I want to teach you today. And I think it's going to be incredibly useful to you, or at least that's my hope, right? Here's the problem as I see it. We're not being our own champions. We are judging ourselves at every turn. We are expecting the impossible from ourselves. I kind of see it like we're acting like circus ringmasters, trying to control everything and everyone, trying to make everyone happy, put on a show, solve all the problems, do all the things, get to all the doctor's appointments, learn as much as you can about the IVF process, take all the medications, all the supplements, exercise enough, but not too much, eat the right foods, meet everyone's needs, manage the finances, handle the house, keep everyone happy, prove to ourselves and others, that's key, how strong we are and how much we have it under control. We're quite literally expecting the impossible. We're expecting perfection. And we've adopted these standards of consumerism as our own, right? We've adopted this standard of perfectionism. We have to look the part. We have to be all the things to all the people all the time. We have to be happy all of the time. And we don't, or we aren't, because we can't, because it isn't possible, because that's not where happiness comes from. But we hold ourselves to the standard that doesn't make any flippin' sense, and it isn't possible, and we make ourselves miserable, and we put so much pressure on ourselves. It's literally killing us. I'm not exaggerating. That's not hyperbole. Our nervous systems are exhausted. And I'm not even talking about how out of whack things are already just because of the stress and the grief of infertility and the hormones associated with treatment, right? Our adrenal fatigue, off the charts. We're anxious, we're stressed, we're sad. And that's why I wanted to do this episode, because it doesn't have to be this way. But most of us, we're either dwelling in the past or we're worried about the future. And we're wishing things hadn't happened the way they did, or we're wishing things in a way that kind of is in fantasy land, or we're wanting a do-over. And we're looking forward and we're feeling anxious about what's coming our way. And we're allowing ourselves to believe these terrible stories in our brain. And we're making up all of these things that are going to come to pass and unfold instead of choosing on purpose, with intention, what we want to believe and what we want to create. And we're feeling very hopeless and powerless. And we're doing it to ourselves. And we don't know we're doing it most of the time. We don't know how to feel our feelings. And we're so busy distracting ourselves from what we feel. We're using food, we're using alcohol, work, projects, Netflix, shopping, cell phone, social media, blah, 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 all of these things. We're judging. We're judging so much. We're judging how we feel. We're telling ourselves how we should feel differently. We're judging our grief. We're telling ourselves we should be farther along or we should be doing it differently. We're judging ourselves as people, as wives, as workers, as friends, as partners. Whatever your role is, you're probably judging yourself based on that. We're using whatever is going on in our friends' lives, the friends who have children or are pregnant, as weapons against ourselves, as evidence that we aren't good enough, that they have what we want, or that we're terrible friends for even thinking that. We're comparing ourselves to other people. We're using their success, right? Even outside of the context of infertility, we're using their success against ourselves. We're judging how people show up and wishing that that were different. And this judgment is keeping us so frustrated and so resentful and so stuck. And most of us are not making ourselves or our mental health a priority. We aren't figuring out how to take care of ourselves from a place of self-love. That's not what we've been taught. We're not choosing to make time to invest in what will ultimately allow us to create the life that we want. With or without children, we aren't being our own champions. And listen, I say this with love. I say this as a woman who has done this to herself and still has to consistently remind herself to be her own champion, right? We teach what we most need to learn. I continue to try and learn from this for myself, and so therefore I will teach it to you. So this doesn't come from a high preachy place, right? That's not how Emily does these things. This doesn't come from any sort of judgment as though I am better than you. I am struggling with this as much as anyone on the planet. If you had been in the 9-round parking lot with me, you would have seen that. I mean, clearly, if I missed an appointment for a children's day camp and that took me down for about 30 minutes, I need this just as much as you do. So what do we do? How do we become our own champion? I think there are essentially 3 steps, just 3. I'm not saying they're easy, but they're simple to understand. So first, we have to actually make a decision that we will be our own champion. We have to decide that for ourselves. We have to decide that we will figure out how to do it, that we won't give up until we create a different relationship with ourselves. There is no blueprint, right? That's why I say figure it out. Nobody's going to hand you instructions. It's going to be trial and error. We're going to try things on like we're in a dressing room. We have to decide now to treat ourselves with loving kindness no matter what. And not only do we have to decide now, but we have to keep choosing it over and over and over every day for the rest of our lives. And we keep reminding ourselves that we are our own advocate, our own ally, our own cheerleader, our own champion. There is no one more qualified for this job. No one else can do this, but we have to choose it. So are you with me? I want you to choose it now. You're going to have to choose it again in a couple of hours when something else happens, but I want you to make that decision now. Even if you think you've already chosen it, I want you to choose it again. Reaffirm to yourself that you choose to be your own champion no matter what. That's step number one. We have to choose to make a decision that we are our own champion. We will be our own champion. Now, step number two is that we have to get clear on how we want to measure our success. We have to decide that perfect is not the goal. It's not possible. It's not the goal. Last week's episode called The Gap versus the Gain talks all about this, how we measure success in a way that does not serve us. So here's my suggestion. Based on the agreement I made with myself, we decide that the goal is to be imperfect and a messy human whose heart is in the right place, that we wake up every day and that we do the best we can with what we know, and that we measure that we figure out how to love ourselves, including our flaws, how to love our imperfect human selves. Look, friends, I am messy. I am an ADHD, anxiety-fueled chaos goblin that runs on too much caffeine, and I have sticky notes that plaster my bathroom wall, Google task lists that never get done, and I have a team of people around me gently nudging me to complete tasks. And I am incredibly empathetic and insightful. I can get to the root of why someone is hurting pretty quickly. And I can make just about anyone laugh. And I believe that I help people see how beautiful, unique, and loved they are. I don't know if I was any less of a chaos goblin that I would be able to do those other things. And I like that I can do those other things. I love it, actually. I love being of service. I love filling people up with love and laughter and realism and hope. So I'm both things. I'm all those things. I'm messy, I am imperfect, and yet they all sort of fit together. The idea is to stop holding ourselves back from feeling good because of our own self-criticism. And we allow our feelings to run their course, and we stop judging ourselves for having them, and we stop telling ourselves that they shouldn't be there, and we focus on what we can control, which is always what we think, how we feel, and what we do. That is how we create the life we truly want. We can do this even in the waiting. We can't control the way other people think or feel, even those closest to us, and certainly not our families and friends and our coworkers or any of the people that have opinions about how we're running our lives. We need to stay in our own lane. Let people have their own human experience. Because the only thing we can control, again, is our response to how other people choose to be. We can control our response to the things that happen to us. We have got to stop using everybody else's thoughts and feelings as a measurement. So let's get really clear on how we want to measure success, because if it's based on how somebody else is feeling or the past or the future, which hasn't even happened yet, we're going to keep ourselves miserable, and that is not being our own champion. So here's my measurement. Today, was I an imperfect and messy human who did the best she could with what she knew? And the answer to that question is always, every single day, yes. No matter what kind of day you had, no matter what you thought, no matter what you felt, no matter what you did, no matter how you showed up, no matter how often your brain or other people tell you that you should have, would have, could have done things different or better, the answer to the question, was I an imperfect and messy human who did the best she could with what she knew? The answer is always yes. Third and final step. And this may be the trickiest. This one requires the most practice. This is the one that I have the most trouble with. And that is probably, again, where I spend most of my time when I'm trying to help my clients. We have to notice the judgmental thoughts release them, and allow ourselves to choose new thoughts on purpose. Notice the judgmental thoughts, release them, and choose new thoughts on purpose. The thoughts we think are not us. The thoughts we think are not universal facts about the world, about us, about anything. We are not our thoughts. We are the awareness around our thoughts. We are a human with thoughts. We can think about our thoughts. We can notice them. We can turn them into objects. We can see them as though they're floating in our brains and not attach ourselves to them. I'm quite convinced these judgmental thoughts, these fear-creating thoughts, these stress-inducing thoughts, all of these thoughts, they're just part of being human. They will always show up in your brain. It's fine. It's not a problem. When we are able to detach ourselves from those thoughts because we can notice them and see them, oh, this is the part where my brain tells me I should be doing things differently. I see you. Sentence in my brain. I should be doing it differently. It's a sentence. You're not useful. You're not serving me. Just because you showed up into my brain doesn't mean I have to keep thinking you. It doesn't mean I have to focus my attention there. It doesn't mean I have to believe you. I can notice you and let you go, and I can choose something new on purpose. And I love the idea. And this is another way of saying step 3. Talk to yourself more than listen to yourself. That's the answer. Talk to yourself more than you listen to yourself. Because if all we do is listen to ourselves and we have all of these unhelpful thoughts on repeat, all of these judgmental thoughts, all of these perfectionistic-based thinking, all of these thoughts that keep us from being our own champion, all we do is listen to those same thoughts over and over and over, then we have very well-established pathways in our brain that just keep showing up. So guess what we create? We create the same stuff we've always created. We create the same misery we've always created. We keep ourselves repeating the same cycles everywhere. So we've got to notice the judgmental thoughts and see them for what they are. Words strung together in a sentence with punctuation on repeat in our brains, like the ticker tape scrolling on 24-hour news or on ESPN or something. So let's go back through it. 3 steps. Make a decision you will be your own champion. That's step 1. Step 2, get clear on how we want to measure success. And my suggestion is that the goal be an imperfect and messy human whose heart is in the right place, who does the best she can with what she knows. But that's just my suggestion, because the answer to that question, did I do those things, is always yes. Always. Okay. And the 3rd step is that we have to notice the judgmental thoughts as thoughts. We have to release them. We have to choose new thoughts on purpose. We're going to talk to ourselves more than we're going to listen to ourselves. And that is how we become our own champion. That's it. So if you can relate to any of this, welcome to the human experience. I welcome you. It's not just you, I swear. I've had so many conversations with people all of the time who think that whatever it is they're thinking or feeling is unique to them, that surely other people don't struggle with these same things. And I just want to tell you, it's not true. All of us do. We're all humans. We're all struggling with these same things. And so if this resonated with you, it's because you're human on this planet, and I hear you. So I hope this was helpful. And as always, especially if you want help with step number 3, noticing the thoughts, releasing them, and choosing new thoughts on purpose, I do so much coaching, and I have a lot of tools around this and strategies for how to do this in detail. So you can also book one of the mini sessions. I do that a lot. The free mini sessions, complimentary, 30 minutes just for you. And this is something that I focus on a lot with those clients. So that is what I have for each and every one of you. Have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.